Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, all praise is due to Him alone, and may He send His peace and blessings upon the last and final Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. So today I will be highlighting my experience of becoming a Muslim, of my journey to Islam. And there are quite a bit of topics to talk about. There's a lot of things to mention. The main one I think is how is it that an Israeli Muslim or an Israeli Jew became a Muslim? When I tell people about this, when I tell them that I'm from Israel, I usually try to say Palestine, but I mean it doesn't really convey the same type of message. But when I tell them I'm from Israel, they become so shocked. They're so surprised. They have so many questions, and I think sometimes having a video to direct people to is quite good because there's just so much to unpack, so much to talk about. So, inshallah, I'll be going ahead and talking about this, explaining my experiences, what I've been through, how I came to become a Muslim, where I came from, how did I end up in Palestine, all these kind of things. And so, inshallah, may Allah help me with this, and I hope you guys enjoy this. If you have any questions, please leave some comments, send me an email, and inshallah we can address those in the videos to come, inshallah. All right, so there are a few things to keep in mind. One thing is my name. So I put that my name is Stanislav Aleksandrovich. That is not my real name, but it is related. I do not feel comfortable releasing my name, just because there might be some problems doing that. So we'll just leave it at that. You can call me Stanislav, and yeah, I do not wish to show my identity just yet, just because I don't know. It might bring some issues. It might not. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable doing that at the moment. And you know, with today's age, things can spread really fast. People can do a lot of things, especially with these different mobs around the world. Certain type of people are able to attack people. They can find their addresses. They can do all these kind of things. I'm not afraid of that. It's just I'm just trying to, minimize any type of damage that might be possible, any damage that might come to me. So, or harm, whatever it might be. So I just don't want to do that. And I'm not going to reveal too many details about myself or anything specific. Nothing that will link to me, inshallah. At least I'm going to try to. If it comes back to me, I'm ready. I'm okay. There's no issue to it. But it's just something that I want to do. I know other people feel comfortable putting their faces out there, saying exactly everything about themselves, but over the years I've kind of learned not to do that, and not revealing too much information unnecessarily, so I'll be doing that. I'll be speaking English the whole time, inshallah. I hope to make more videos either in Russian or in Hebrew. Those are my two other languages. English is my dominant language. It's not my native tongue, but it is my dominant language now because of where I grew up. But inshallah, I'll be trying to make some videos. I'll try to leave some subtitles. I'll see if YouTube is able to do that. If not, then I'll just make another video, inshallah. And yeah, let's get to it. All right, moving on to my background. So the first thing that I should be mentioning is my family background. My entire family is from Ukraine. You could argue we have probably some roots in Palestine long before. I don't know when, but I'll get to that later. So yeah, they're from Ukraine. My mom is from Kiev. My dad is from Dnipropetrovsk. Now it's been changed to Dnipro because of the different changes that are happening in Ukraine right now. People are trying to be more Ukrainian and less Russian, and the name of that city, Dnipropetrovsk, has some roots, some connections to the Soviet Union, to Russian, and so they're trying to distance themselves from that. And so, yeah. So my family's from there. My grandma, my grandpa's from there. Their grandparents are from there. I don't really have any information past that, like my great grandparents. I don't know if they came from somewhere else, but I do know my dad's side. Like my grandma, I believe, was from Russia, or at least her side was from Russia. And my mom's side is generally from Ukraine, as far as I know. And yeah, I know there's all these things happening in Ukraine right now, and all those problems. The war has been happening since 2014. But for a long, long time, both of those countries have been very, very close together. There hasn't been many problems. Both languages have been used in Ukraine, Russian and Ukrainian. Kind of like in, I don't know, other countries where they might have two languages that are dominant and both are respected in some sense. They didn't really have this sentiment as much against Russian, perhaps because that was because of the Soviet Union. It was very, very present in Russia, and so yeah, so that's kind of that. And my most of my family speaks Russian. Like only my dad speaks Ukrainian. Yeah, and my parents met in Ukraine while they were on a skiing trip, and they got married pretty quickly. Within 1 year, they got married, and then within another year, my brother was born, and they stayed there for a few years. And this was like in the 1980s, and then in the early 1990s, that's when the Soviet Union collapsed. There were all these protests, all these things going on, and so the entire empire or union completely just dissolved, and so all the countries gained independence. And during that time, during the Soviet Union, people were not exactly able to leave it. There was something called like an Iron Dome or something like that, where people have to stay within the empire. And so my parents never really had the choice to leave. But once it collapsed, Ukraine became an independent country. The borders were open, and so my grandma was the first one. Well, my grandma and my grandpa were the first ones to leave, and they obviously left to what was then and now Israel, given my Jewish heritage. And so people who then moved um, to Israel who are Jewish, they get automatic citizenship. So there's no naturalization. It's just like you're Jewish, great. You become a citizen, no questions asked. You have to prove that you're a Jew. The details of how that's done, I'm not exactly sure. I know that my grandma, like my great grandma, had like a Jewish name, and there was something that they were able to prove with. But you'd have to look that up yourself. But I'm not exactly sure. They moved there first. And then the year after that, so I think this was like 1993, my grandparents moved. 1994, my parents moved with my brother. And yeah, so my brother was born in Ukraine. My entire family was born there. Only me and my cousins were born in Israel. And before I even continue, I know like what's going on there. I live there. I don't support Israel as a state. I don't support what it's doing. I'm gonna use the name of Israel just to be like clear about where I'm from, what I mean, like, because if I use Palestine, it's gonna give the wrong impression. People are gonna think I'm Arab, or they're gonna think different things. So when I say Israel, don't take it as I'm supporting Israel or anything like that. I'm just using it as because that's the state that exists now, whether you like it or not. That's what people call it now. It's a country. What can we do? You know, like I'm just gonna be using it as that because that's what I've been using my whole life. But I don't support it. Yeah, that's something I could talk about in another video, inshallah. For those non-Muslims that don't know some of the terminology, inshallah means if God wills it. Alhamdulillah means all praises due to Allah, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, so my family moved there, and then that's where I was born. I was born in Israel, Palestine. Where exactly, it doesn't matter. I was born in the desert. Yeah. And let's see if there's anything else. So yeah, we were kind of, most of our life we've been speaking Russian. That's my mother tongue. That's what I grew up speaking at home with my family, with many other like people in Israel. I've never been really to Europe other than just being there once during a flight. I was there in between on a layover. I was able to go to Europe, but I don't know Europe. The only thing I know of the world really is the Middle East, Israel. So yeah, and so we grew up there, and we used to speak Hebrew. The Hebrew is the national kind of like language that most people speak. Arabic is also, and so is English, but Hebrew really is the national language. And then that's the language I was most comfortable with most of my life. That's the language I was thinking in, that I was talking to my friends in, to my cousins, to whoever it might be. Russian was just a language that we would speak between family members or people who are also Russian speaking. And yeah, so now we'll move on Sorry if I'm not able to stay exactly on track. Sometimes I just talk about other things, but they might be related. So we'll move on to religion in my family. So religion hasn't really been something big in my family. There's kind of like a big difference between being a Jew and being like a Hebrew, as they call it. So like there's a person that actually practices the religion, and there's a person that's just a Jew. Like you're just ethnically a Jew, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you practice the religion as well. So for example, there might be people that are like atheistic Jews, like Jews that are atheists. It doesn't really make sense. It's like having a Christian atheist. Like how is that possible? But because Judaism is an ethno religion, it means that like by default, just by birth, you are part of the religion and part of the ethnicity, part of the lineage. So like religion hasn't really been part of my life, like in terms of practicing it or anything like that. But it has been there culturally, especially being like living in Israel, because my parents weren't really able to practice Judaism in Israel, even if they not in Israel, in Ukraine, even if they wanted to. They didn't want to, but if they did, it would be pretty difficult. I think like there is a pretty big kind of Jewish presence there. There's this one place, I think it's called Oman or something. Not the Arab country Oman, but there's a city called Oman. So there's like some big Jewish grave there that people go to every year. They almost make like a pilgrimage there. But so they used to be a really big presence. There still is, not as big. A lot of people moved to Israel, but yeah, my parents were just never really interested in. But there was a lot of like anti-Jewish sentiment there, and a lot of people hated Jews for various reasons. But in Israel, there was just like the national holidays that we used to celebrate. We did bar mitzvah, which means like when a boy turns 13, then he becomes officially a man. There's no such thing as like 18 or anything for Jews. It's 13 for a boy, 12 for a girl. Some people use that to say that girls mature much faster than boys, which might be true, might not be. I don't know. Yeah, so we did we used to do bar mitzvahs. We did one for my brother. We did the different holidays like Passover, Hanukkah, all those different holidays that people are aware of. But it was nothing ever like extremely religious. It wasn't anything like we were doing out of our own will or like out of our own desire. It was just like that's what everyone else is doing. That's what we're doing. Kind of like most of the world. People celebrate Christmas because that's just what everybody else does. They don't necessarily believe that Jesus died on the 25th of December, or they don't believe in anything like that. They just do it because it's fun or whatever else. So that was kind of like that for us. It was a way to get together with families. It was a way to do different fun things. Yeah. So, but generally, we believed in God. We believed in religion, like as something that's true, something that we have to hold on to, and especially because there's a lot of kind of I don't know if we want to call it guilt or shame, but there's a lot of kind of like this feeling that you have to be Jewish, you have to kind of subscribe to it, whether you like it or not. It's just something that by default you have to believe in, you have to be part of, and so kind of like yeah. Anyways, maybe I'll talk about that later, but. Calling yourself something that's something that's outside of Judaism or outside of being a Jew is a big no-no. But yeah, overall we weren't very religious. My dad now is currently an atheist. From speaking to him over the years, my mom believes in God. She doesn't believe in everything that Judaism calls to, and so that's that. And how I ended up in Israel and Palestine, I already discussed. It was mostly just because like life in Ukraine was very difficult. There was a lot of hatred towards Jews. My mom, actually, yeah, that's one thing I didn't talk about. My mom had to change, like my mom's family had to change their last name at some point before, because if you have a certain last name that indicates that you're Jew, you'll get a lot of hatred as a kid or even as an adult if they see it on your documents. And so they changed it to a very, very Ukrainian sounding last name where there's no trace of you being a Jew, really. Like nobody ever knew anything about it. My grandpa used to be part of the Soviet army. Like he was like a general or an officer. He used to have people under him. So like nobody ever knew about us being Jewish in Ukraine. And so once the Soviet Union collapsed, we kind of had a choice between Israel and Germany. Really, that's what my parents told me. I don't know. I don't know if that's 100% true. Maybe they had some other options, but the big two kind of options that they were to choose between was Israel or Germany. We all know what happened in Germany. We all know the type of feelings people have, even though it's been so long. It's been like, at that time, it's been like almost 60 years since that the Holocaust happened. But those feelings and those attitudes are still were still there, present at that time, and they're still there right now. Maybe sometimes it shifted towards other things, but Germany is kind of known to be quite hateful towards Jews and other minorities and things like that. So that was not really a choice for them, really. And then so they decided to move to Israel. That's how we ended up there. Most of my family is still there. Myself, my parents, and my brother with his family are elsewhere, but my cousins and my auntie are still there, along with my grandma. So, life growing up as a Jew in the Middle East, I think that's something that a lot of people are quite interested in, like what that must be like, because there's just like such a big separation between Muslims and Israelis or Jews. Like they don't really know what it's like to be there. They just see what's on TV, but they don't really know what it's like. But for me personally, my life was completely fine. It was really, really good. My parents like did a very good job of keeping me away from war, keeping me away from anything that's negative to the best of their ability. So I remember like when I was a kid, I would just leave the door, just tell my mom I'm going out, not tell her where I'm going, who I'm going with. I was able to just go out and not worry about anything. This was me like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Like I had no issue going out, biking around the whole city. I lived in a very, very small city. There was probably like 40,000 people there. It wasn't like one of the big cities like Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or anything like that. So it was just a small city. But there was really nothing there. Crime was maybe present. It is probably more present now, but back then it was quite low. This was in the 1990s, early 2000s, and so yeah, I really loved my childhood. I was very happy. There was nothing really to complain about. I had a dog. I used to walk it all the time. I had friends. We used to bike. We used to play on the streets. I've never seen bombings. My city was never bombed. I've never seen anything really. Like my first time actually seeing the effects of war was when I went there. When I was, I think, either in grade 9 or when I was 18. That's when I actually saw like areas of Tel Aviv after they were bombed by Hamas or I don't know who else it was. But that's the only time I've actually seen something. But as a kid, I never saw that. Yeah, I used to play with my cousin all the time. It was very, very chill. We used to go to school. I mostly just attended elementary. I didn't go beyond elementary in Israel. And also elementary was pretty good. Like we used to do the same type of things that people do in the West. So one thing people have to kind of remember is that Israel is quite secular, quite Western in how it operates and how it looks and how it feels. And so, yeah, like the transition from there to Canada, where I am right now, wasn't as big of a shock or anything. Like some of the attitudes people have here was quite different, but back there, things were very, very good. Like I had a high quality of life compared to like where my family grew up. Like in Ukraine, people, I think they had bathrooms outside of their house. Which one thing I didn't really touch up on, because like in Israel I had lots of food. I had everything I ever really wanted to. That's kind of one of the reasons why my parents moved. They wanted me to have like a better life, a better, materialistic, like not materialistic in the sense of like being obsessed with material, but just having food, having clothes, having toys, like things that they were not always able to have, because in the Soviet Union there was like a lot of starvation. There was things were very, very mismanaged, since it wasn't a capitalist country, it was a communist country. And no, I don't support neither one of these kind of categories of running economies, but we know very clearly that communism did not work, and it was a terrible idea. People used to starve. There's the Holodomor in Ukraine, which was a terrible thing. Millions of people died because they were forcibly starved. So because in communism, supply and demand is kind of controlled, and so the state was able to control the supply, and supply was very, very low. So my parents used to tell me that they would go to the store and they would find no milk, no bread, no nothing. Like people would have to really stock up food and other things in order to survive. And even until this day, my mom still cooks like big pots of food because that's what they used to do back then. Like even though there's no need to do that, that she still kind of she still does that just as maybe as a habit or something. Yeah, so life was quite poor in the Ukraine, but in Israel it was very, very good for the most part. We had an abundance of everything. Alhamdulillah for that. Now, when it comes to school, like we used to study just the same type of things. The education system was very good comparatively. We did used to study the Torah to some extent. It I went to just like a secular school. It wasn't like a religious school. If I went to a religious school, if I had like an Orthodox family, life would have been really, really different. My experiences would have been very, very different. But I'm coming more from like a secular experience, secular life in Israel. And so when I used to go to the school, we used to study the Torah. We used to study different stories and stuff. I don't think I really liked it too much back then. My mom used to tell me that naturally I was just kind of like very curious. I used to ask different questions like what happens after death. I even used to ask about like blood, like why do we bleed and all these kind of things. But I used to love religion. My mom, for the most part, supported. I think my dad was kind of neutral about it. I don't think he cared too much. He didn't like both. Neither of my parents supported it, like in the sense of like they didn't encourage it, but like if questions were asked, they wouldn't turn me away from that. They would kind of just talk to me about that. We went to the synagogue a few times, not with my family, but I did go with school or with my kindergarten, whatever else it might have been. Yeah, but religion was never really pushed or encouraged. Like it was just something that happened as a result of the place we were in. But yeah. So we used to study the Torah a little bit. I don't remember much, honestly. Like I knew a few of the stories, how the people of the children of Israel were saved from Pharaoh. Like Purim, like there's this one holiday where people dress up with different costumes, and like there's kind of like some story to that and all that. Like those are the kind of things we used to know, but nothing too extensive, really. Like, and that kind of moves it towards the attitudes towards Arabs and Islam. So most of the people, like 95% of the people I interacted with were Jews, mostly like white Jews. Maybe they had some Arab like descent or something like that, but we almost never interacted with any Arabs. Like in my city, there was very, very little. The only interactions that we had and the only things that we knew about were the Bedouins, which are like kind of nomads in the Middle East, and there's quite a lot of them in Israel and Palestine. And so because I lived on the edge of the city, we used to just go out and go for walks in the middle of the desert. Like now thinking about it, that sounds really, really dangerous. It sounds like terrible. But as like a 7, 8, 9-year-old, I used to do that. I used to do it with my brother. It was like because we had a dog, so we had to take it for a walk, and we used to go for long walks to this area, just outside my house. And we used to see them every so often. We would see like their camels and all that. Like I don't think we were like trying to do anything to them. We weren't like hateful in that sense, but we had negative attitudes towards them, just because of just what they might have done. Because sometimes they would go into people's backyards and steal things and all that kind of stuff. But also there was just like a very negative outlook or negative kind of perception of Arabs, that they're savage, wild, they need to be tamed, they're uncivilized, like we're here to kind of save them from their own selves in some sense. And so there was a lot of hatred. And I even remember like when I went back when I was 18, I think I was about 18 when I went back for a visit, and we were kind of just sitting in the Merkaz, which is like the center of the city. It's kind of like in my town, it was very, very tiny. It's like the size of like, I don't know, maybe it's like 100 feet by 100 feet. It was quite a small downtown, if you want to call it. But we used to sit there, and then I think I said something about Arabs, like, like, and then they were like, oh, why would you say that? Are you an Arab lover? So I was like, what? I love everybody in the sense of like, like I don't really like, I don't discriminate against people, but like that's kind of the sentiment that people have in Israel. Like they they really hate Arabs, and a lot of it probably has to do with the wars that happened between Jews and Arabs. Or I don't know if you want to call it wars, but it's the conflict, the oppression that Jews inflict upon Arabs, and then the responses that we received, that they received back, with the responses we used to receive. That kind of caused a little bit of hatred, or maybe a lot of it. So yeah, and we used to kind of learn a little bit about the history of the different wars that occurred, that like 1967 or 1948, and the different intifadas and whatever else it might have been. I don't really remember too much of it, but I remember we did talk about that. And I remember one time when I was in school, I didn't know the name of the president or the prime minister at the time, and like my teacher really scolded me for it. Like that was like a big no-no. Like you need to know the name of the president or the prime minister. Like I didn't really care about those kind of things. I was so young at the time, but I think I was in grade 2, and she was really really harsh. Yeah, she was quite harsh about that. Yeah, but in terms of like exposure to Islam, and was very very minimal. Maybe I used to see something when I was in Jerusalem. We used to, I think, for sure, I must have heard the adhan at the time, but I had no idea what it was. Even when I went there when I was 18, I heard it, but I didn't pay too much attention to it. Like, I wasn't exactly sure what that was. So, yeah, my exposure to Islam was little to none at the time. Yeah, but we did know quite a bit about Arabs. We had quite negative attitudes towards them. And so we'll move on to the next section. And I will move on to where I am right now, which is life in Canada. I'm sorry I wasn't able to explain too much about life in Israel. If you have any more questions, you can definitely send it to me. I will explain more about that if you have anything specific, but I don't really know what other specific things people are interested in knowing. But that was kind of it there. And also, plus, I don't really have too much time to talk about. I wanted to try to make this video as not as short, but like kind of limited to 1 hour. So currently I'm in Canada. The reason why we moved to Canada, and when, so like firstly the reason why we moved is because in Israel you have to join the army once you're 18. Like if you're physically able, if you're not mentally disabled or anything like that, you have to go to the army. And there's a big kind of like not phobia. It's a big taboo thing. Like if you don't attend the army, then the whole country, all the people in it will view you very negatively. You even lose some rights. Like I believe you're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to do certain things. As someone who hasn't attended the army, I remember I knew some, like my brother had a friend who like chose to go to jail instead of going to the army. And I don't think it was because of he had like some sort of mercy or compassion towards Arabs or anything like that. It's just that he didn't want to be in the army, like for whatever reason. But you have to go to the army. And so at the time that when we moved, my brother had to go to the army. He was called, and so we kind of moved before he had to do that, or he was able to just really escape it. In fact, he moved here by himself first, and then within a few years we moved here. I moved here when I was about 11, so I just finished grade 5 at the time, and I was going into grade 6. I've been here so far, it's been like 16 years, I think, since 2007. So yeah, that's 16 years this year. Yep, so that's that. And then life in Canada was pretty chill. Like I said earlier, there wasn't really like that big of a culture shock. It was mostly the people here were very, very different. In Israel, people are very, very hot-headed. They're very quick to start yelling, shouting, using their hands, honking their horns, or whatever else it might be. People in Canada are a lot more mellow. They're very chill, very nice, courteous. They smile. They're very, very nice people, very accepting and all that. Like the feeling here was much different. Or the vibe was quite different. Yeah, and then when it comes to religion and spirituality as a teenager in Canada, first, before I even go to that, like when I came here, I first went to like a Jewish private school, which I didn't really get along with many people there just because we were so different. Like I used to hang out with other Israeli Jews there, And because we were kind of poor, we didn't speak English too well. We learned it obviously within like about a year, but we still all spoke Hebrew to each other, and we were a little bit, I want to say a little bit uncivilized, a little bit kind of rude in how we used to talk and how we behaved. Um, there were some kids that did stay in that school, but most of us left that private school just because people there are generally snobby, like Jews who are super rich, that have their own community, they have their own like kind of experiences together. They're quite different from people that just come from Israel. So yeah, so I didn't continue with that private school. I moved on to just public schools in Canada. Very quickly, I had to adapt and leave off my Jewish identity in some sense. So I used to tell people I'm not Jewish, I'm only half, or I used to just hide it. And whenever people tried to make fun of me for it, like I used to just deny it. So um, there was a lot of anti-Semitism, if you want to call it that, like a lot of hatred towards Jews, even like at least as kids. I'm not sure about adults so much, but as kids they used to you want to call it bully us a little bit. But yeah, but I had to kind of hide it. In terms of religion and spirituality, like it was non-existing really. Like most of my life as a teenager was completely absent of religion and spirituality. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. Canada is a very, very secular country. You can call it a Christian country because majority of people identify as Christians, like about 70%. But it is not in any way Christian or religious. You can compare it to America. America is a little bit more religious, or a lot more religious, but Canada is very, very secular, and it's because of its history. So I never had any religion really. There was one thing that I kind of started to develop or get interested in, which was the New Age movement. That was kind of around when I was like 14, 15, 16, I think, which is more or less like a mumbo jumbo of different religions, different beliefs, mostly Hindu polytheistic beliefs. And so I kind of used to follow that. It was mostly because some people around me were into that, and I don't want to blame anybody for making me like that, but there was just some people that kind of encouraged me. They taught me about that, and that's what I used to believe. That's what I used to follow, and it's more of, it was like there was like a lot of kind of belief in aliens for me. Those were my gods in some way. Like I remember I even went to this one camp to work in, and I kind of drew on the wall because it was kind of common in the camp to like draw within like the place that you lived in. It's just something people did. I don't know if it was allowed or not, but nobody took it off. So I used to say that this is God, and I drew a picture of an alien. So yeah, like that's what I was super into. I used to believe in lots of conspiracies, and like that was my religion in some aspect. Like that's what I put all of my thought to, and so I became more spiritual. My belief in the Creator and God was there, but it was more coming from that type of aspect. It wasn't a religious one to some extent. So that's kind of what I used to believe in. That's what I used to do. There was like a lot of, what would you call it, hypnosis that we used to do, and then I used to kind of enter this dream-like state where I would see certain things. I would like be on some other planets, and so this kind of movement, or this spiritual type of movement, if you want to call it New Age, is very much into that, into aliens and getting some messages from them. All this kind of nonsense, that things that I see as nonsense right now, but that was what I was really into. And the people that actually even taught me that, the ones that kind of encouraged me towards it, they also left it just like me. So it's kind of interesting, because honestly, it did not provide me any answers to anything. Like everything was so vague, everything was so personal and subjective. There's no clear answers about anything. It was just like very mystical in nature. Mysticism really just means like kind of finding things through experiences and through doing various type of acts, through spiritual acts, just finding those kind of things. So yeah, that was kind of it for most of my teenage life. That's what I was into. But still, at the time, I used to go party, do everything that teenagers do in Canada and other places in the world. I'm not gonna go too much into my experiences just because I don't think it's as relevant. But I was mostly into that. I believed in God. I think when I moved to Canada initially, I remember telling somebody I didn't believe in God, and then they told me like, "Oh, you're stupid." like they were also a Jew from Israel. But so I don't know how that happened, but I think sometime later I came back to believing in God. But a big change in my life was moving to a new city. So I kind of became distanced from these people that encourage this new age movement, and I had more time to myself, um, just more freedom in some sense, like psychological freedom. So I moved from this city once I became about like once I finished high school. I moved to this new city. I'm not gonna mention what. It doesn't matter I'm not gonna mention which city because it does not matter. So I moved to this new city, and I had to just do like I had to upgrade, which mean in Canada, if you, for example, graduate from high school but you need extra courses in order to apply to university, then you need to upgrade. So I upgraded like 2 courses. It took me about a year just because of different things. I wasn't exactly sure which courses I need to, so I had like a little bit of a hiccup there. But during that time, I worked full time for like in a gas station. I used to interact with a lot of like Christians. We used to get a lot of pamphlets from this group, this like sect of Christians called Jehovah's Witnesses. Some don't even consider them Christian, but because they have some very oppositional beliefs when compared to like general Christianity or like mainstream Christianity. And so I used to read a lot of that stuff. I used to read the Bible. It was very interesting. Like I used to get into that, but it just did not satisfy me as much. And so I'm gonna explain more about that in the next slide, inshallah. So that was about becoming Muslim and my journey towards that. Now, life after becoming Muslim was quite interesting. There were some challenges, but my overall experience was very, very positive. So I became Muslim in January. I think it was like 30th or 31st, 2016. So it's been 7 years now, over 7 years. And yeah, I became Muslim in university. I got to know it. Like I got to like the way that it happened was actually quite interesting because at the time I was kind of confused about like Islam. Like I wasn't sure if I'm supposed to take the shahada or not. Nobody told me you're supposed to take the shahada, like the meaning the testimony of faith. And so I used to pray in English. I used to just kind of do my own thing the way I thought you're supposed to do. And so one day I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna go to the mosque today. Like today's the day I'm gonna go to the mosque. And so I remember on the way back from my upgrading, like from school, I met this one guy that I used to, like whatever, do like smoke weed with and whatever. And he was Muslim. He used to even eat pork or something, which is like so strange. Um, I remember I used to ask him like, bro, like we're eating pizza with pork, like aren't you Muslim? And then he just kind of joke about it or something. But uh, yeah, so I met him there. He was with another guy who I think was also Muslim, and they kind of directed me to one of the mosques that was close to my house at the time. And so I went to the mosque and I told the person I was Muslim because what I knew at the time was like, what makes you a Muslim is that if you submit yourself to the will of God, if you believe in the religion, then you're a Muslim. And so that's what I used to tell people, like, I'm Muslim. And so he didn't really question that. He gave me some material, and then he redirected me to another brother who was also a convert, and he was like kind of in this circle of other converts. He would give them lessons weekly, I think, just some very basic things about like zakah, hajj, shahada, salah, whatever, and or maybe sirah. So I got in touch with him. I met with him at the university, I believe, and he also thought I was Muslim because like I just do so much. I used to tell him so many things. I even corrected him once, and so he invited me to a potluck at another mosque, and so I went there. And the moment I got there was this one brother who later became my mentor, even until now. He kind of, the moment I came in, he's like, "Are you Muslim? Did you take the shahada? No. Okay, come sit down with me." We sat down. We talked about the 5 pillars of Islam, the 6 articles, and all those kind of things. And he was like, "Okay, you're Muslim. All you have to do is just take the shahada. Are you ready?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I went in front of the mosque. There weren't that many people. Like there was like maybe 20 people, 20 brothers, and maybe some sisters in the back too. Because I think this was like after prayer. I don't know exactly when we came in. Um, So I became Muslim right in front of people there, uh, and they all gave me a hug, and it was just like a really good experience. We sat down, we talked about my experiences and all that, and later we went and sat down and we ate, and I talked more to people. It was just like a very good experience, like a very welcoming way of accepting me. And then also at the same time, I saw something about like Muslim Students Association somewhere, and so I messaged them at the time, and this one brother responded to me, and he was like there's gonna be this potluck, you should come to it, and all that. But I didn't see that email after the potluck, so it was a really interesting kind of like moment because I realized that that brother that messaged me that was at the potluck was the same one, like from the email. So, it kind of like the qadr of Allah, the destiny of Allah, like is very interesting. And so from that, I kind of became closer to people at the MSA, the Muslim Students Association, and I became kind of involved with it. I was very quick to like join the MSA, and then to also become part to kind of be engaged in the like in the dawa in calling people to Islam. I was very interested in that, so I told them like if I can do that, like it'd be great. And so that's what I started with. Yeah, so I became pretty involved with the dawa, which is calling people to Islam from that moment on until even now. I still do it on the streets. I do it like at the university, and obviously through like social media like Instagram and YouTube and whatever else. I try to also call people to Islam during my own life whenever I can. Like just start conversations with people about God, about purpose in life, about good and bad, those kind of things. Um, so at least when it came to university, like it was very very good because I right away had like friends. I had community people really took me in quite well. Um, like I was able to develop relationships that are still I still have until today with these people from university until today. And so it kind of gave me like a sense of community at the time. Like, and it gave me a sense of like being able to go to someone for answers. So not only did I have a mentor at the mosque who used to meet with me like once a week, we would learn how to read the Quran. We would learn about Islam, how to pray, how to make wudu, how to do all these kind of things. I would learn that at the mosque, and then when I would hang out with people at university, we'd obviously be talking about different things, and so I used to ask them about certain things. We used to talk about different topics, and so it kind of really gave me like that. Um, it kind of strengthened my Islam, my iman, and just my sense of community, my sense of self, and just everything in general. Like it was a very very good time for me, and everything that happened really quickly because like I've been watching a lot of videos about like even things about getting married, about like how dating or like not dating but like whether dating is allowed, what are you supposed to do if you want to be with another like with a woman if you're a man, and vice versa. Like and when I found obviously I found out like early on that the only way that you can be in a relationship like a romantic one is through marriage. So I was like, okay, well, if I really want to be like I want to be with somebody, so the the next thing for me to do is to get married. And my mentor at the time wasn't telling me to like just wait or anything like that, because maybe he saw that I was like ready for it. I was at the right in the right mind space, and I had a job at the time obviously too. So I was working I think for HMV, which is now completely sold to another company, and they're like non-existing anymore. It was just like a music and movies store. So I worked there. I was able. That was kind of my job at the time. I obviously transitioned out of that, but because I knew it was haram. So like so a lot of parts of it were. It was just not the best environment for me. Um, yeah, but the next thing for me was to kind of like get married, and there was a sister at that I met at the like at the MSA at the university, which was after I became Muslim, not before. I did not know of her before, so I didn't become Muslim to get married to her. This only happened afterwards. I wanted to make that clear. We like I asked about her. I inquired from other people. I kind of tried to go look through. I tried to do the whole process of how to get married, and maybe if people are interested in that, maybe I can talk about it later. But I don't think it's as important. But I went through the process. I got married within like just less than a year. Like within that same year of 2016, I got married, alhamdulillah. So I moved out. I had a job. I was working for like Tim Hortons at the time, just making minimum wage, but I was able to do it. So, if I can do it, you can do it too. And but when it came to my family, they didn't accept it very well. It was very difficult for them because the moment I told my mom, like, oh yeah, I became Muslim, she was like, no, you can't be Muslim. So I was just like, well, it's too late. I already am. There's nothing we can really do about it now. And she's quite upset. My dad obviously heard about it from her, and he wasn't happy with it. I started to grow the beard. They kept telling me to shave the beard off, and like I'll be praying in my room, and like my mom would try to like talk to me as I'm praying, and I'll tell her to just like kind of like I'll do like a hand gesture to just like wait. Um, but yeah, I used to have so many just different discussions. They would always criticize me for different things, and it was quite kind of difficult to some extent because like they would watch the TV a lot, like the news, and every day there would be something going on, some form of like attack on Muslims on the media, or there would be some terrorist attacks, and then they'd be like, "Oh, you see, this is what Islam is. This is what Muslims do." And so anything that I really tried to tell them about Islam didn't fly. It just went over their head because it the media did a pretty good job of like trying to divert people away from it. And I think the thing that really helped them was um, meeting my wife's family and meeting her for the first time before our marriage. That kind of really set the tone for them for like realizing that Muslims are not all terrorists. They're not all bad. They're just as worried about different problems as anyone else is. So they met them. They went to their house, and then they got comfortable with them. They asked questions about like whatever terrorism, all these kind of things, and my wife's family were able to answer it in a way that was satisfactory to my family, and so their mindset, their opinions changed within just like overnight. So alhamdulillah for that. And things were progressively getting much easier. We still have conversations every so often about purpose of life, about Islam, about these kind of things, God. But they're not Muslim yet, so make dua for them. I make dua for them, and inshallah Allah will change their hearts. Um, the next kind of thing that I kind of did after that was that I tried to seek knowledge, and not I didn't go to University of Medina. I didn't go anywhere like that. You don't necessarily have to. You should soak up all the knowledge that you can around you. And the reason I was able to do this was from my mentor, because after we finished uh, like mastering the alphabet, which is called qaida. And a funny story about that is like when I became Muslim, I was reading, or I was like sitting on the ground. We were like looking at the TV, and my teacher was kind of like showing us a video about the alphabet. I think it was just kind of like a song without music, just a way to kind of there's like a rhythm or whatever rhyme to be able to memorize the alphabet. They called it Al Qaeda. So I was like, wait, what Al Qaeda? Like, so the rumors are true, but they just explained to us like Al Qaeda is just means the basics, the foundation, the fundamentals. So we were learning the fundamentals of Arabic of the alphabet. So once I finished that, I was able to read the Quran. I was able to read like fast enough. There wasn't really much after that, and so some time passed by, and then he told me, well, the next step for you to do is to learn Arabic, because once you learn Arabic, that's when you're able to um, like learn Islam properly. Because whenever you're learning Islam from anybody else, it's always a translation, it's an interpretation from somebody else. Things get lost when people try to explain it in English or in any other language. And so the best way for you to know Islam is to learn Arabic and to listen to real scholars that speak only in Arabic, and that's how it's been ever since. The revelation has been sent down. It's been sent in Arabic. The Quran is in Arabic. The Hadith, the tafsir, the books that are written by the scholars, they're all in Arabic. So if you really want to know the meaning of the Quran, the Hadith, of Islam, the proper way, then you should learn Arabic. And it's not that hard. There's a very good university or like an institute that I'm attending now. It's called Al Andalusi Institute. I can maybe put a link at the in the description. It's really worth the money. It's a one-time payment. You pay it once, and then you have access for your whole life. Within 2 years, if you do things properly the way that they ask you to, you can become fluent in Arabic within 2 years, and you'll memorize 10,000 vocabulary words within that time. So I highly recommend it, and this is what I'm doing now. At the time, we used to just kind of read the same book that I'm doing now in this institute, and yeah, like we used to like it kind of like now I have kind of the basis for Arabic, like just some very basic things, and so I'm able to kind of continue with this institute in a, like a much easier way. And so like we used to just meet together. There'd be like a few other brothers with us, but not everybody sticked. Most people quit. Most people got busy with life. Something happened. So it really just came down to me and another brother. That was also part of another group of people learning Arabic that where everybody quit and only he was left. So alhamdulillah. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. In terms of like other type of knowledge, I just usually watch people that are reliable on YouTube. There's one channel where they translate like lectures and maybe short clips of real scholars talking about different issues. I can leave a few people that I've relied on, that I've kind of relied on in terms of like getting knowledge from, and very basic things, not like actual real knowledge that you learn at a university, just basic things about, for example, qadar, or learning about different sects, learning about the meaning of tawheed and all that kind of stuff. Learn the meaning of the shahada, like something that everybody should know. I used to learn it from YouTube, from some clips. There's also another kind of like university, if you want to call it, institute. It's called knowledgecollegeonline.com, I think. So that's a very, very good place to also gain knowledge from. I got a lot of things from them. And to kind of wrap things up, I do have kids now, alhamdulillah, after 7 years, two of them. Um, a little bit more kind of on the side about some things that I do not related to Islam per se was is psychology. So I had an interest in psychology before I became Muslim, like way before when I was in high school. I had a pretty strong attachment or like interest in it. So that's what I did in university. I got a bachelor's in psychology and linguistics too. So I did a double major, and so now I'm just doing a master's in counseling, which is for those that don't know, is the practical aspect of psychology. So psychology is just the study of the human mind, if you wanna call it that, and how people behave and behave like behavior in general, the mind, how people think, all those kind of things. And so counseling is there's just the application of that knowledge of people. So that's what I'm doing now, and hopefully, inshallah, I'll become a psychologist soon within the next few years. At least a counselor by next year, and yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing nowadays. Now, in terms of vision for the future, my main vision for at least like Islamic knowledge is just mastering Arabic, being fluent in it. Hopefully, in the next 2 years, if not in 5 and 10 years, but really mastering the Arabic so I can learn Islam properly, so I can perhaps attend the university in Medina or attend any other institutes in the Muslim world. Um, and then with that, gaining knowledge that is authentic, that is from that's according to the Sunnah, according to the way of our predecessors or the companions, those that follow them. And I hope to at some point move to a Muslim country because I grew up in the West. I grew up in Canada. It wasn't the best place to. It's not the best place to be as a Muslim. Sure, you can pray here, you can pay zakah, you can do a few things, but we are on the attack. Anybody who's religious, anyone who's not for this kind of like liberal mindset, secular atheistic mindset, then these people will be attacked, not physically all the time. Sometimes, or a lot of times, we do get attacked physically, but it's more like ideologically and psychologically. So I do not want that for myself. Do not want that for my kids, and I hope to eventually move somewhere where is not. It's not hasn't been determined yet. Maybe Saudi, maybe Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE. It doesn't really matter. Like maybe Malaysia. I'm not exactly sure, but a Muslim country where I can make money in. I can work as a psychologist. That's my plan, and I hope to just seek more knowledge there by learning Arabic, by studying under somebody and just kind of memorizing the Quran, obviously memorizing hadith, memorizing books from the scholars of before. That would be my plan. Raising a family and hopefully continuing with the dawah, inviting people to Islam and sharing my story later on. We'll see what this channel is going to bring. Hope to develop my career as a psychologist, to maybe become a professor in some university eventually, or just run my own clinic. We'll see. And yeah, that should be it for today. I know I wasn't able to get into all the details, all the things that people might want to, but if you have specific questions, specific things you want me to go into, just please comment below, let me know, and then I can make specific videos about, for example, what it was like getting married, what other aspects or what kind of experiences I had living in Israel. I can go into more detail about that, life in Canada, university, I don't know, whatever other things people might be interested in that I didn't touch upon. I can try to do that, inshallah. And with that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakallah khair for listening, and please follow me on Instagram and YouTube. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.